Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is November 26th, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? So, yesterday night, unfortunately, the Russians launched a huge Shahed drone attack on Kiev alone. Again, for the Russians, it's purely symbolic. They want to demoralize the Ukrainian capital, and they launched over 75 Shahed drones. And some of them were noticed to be the modern, like more modern iterations, because they had a carbon fiber frame, they were painted black or had a carbon fiber frame, and which made them less detectable during the night. So you can see that the Russians are working on newer prototypes to make them more efficient at terrorizing the Ukrainian population. The good news is that the Ukrainians shut down 74 of 75 of these drones, according to them. So that's excellent news. It shows that Kiev is one of the best protected, cities in terms of, with its air defense system. So that's really great news. And thanks to all the Ukrainian partners, the United States, Lithuania, Germany, all the other countries that have really helped to pitch in and help build Ukrainian air defense. A huge thank you to all of you and the people supporting that. And so Ukraine also mentioned that if that was to happen, that there will be consequences, as you can see in this article, as it was mentioned by the Ukrainian general staff. And so this night in Moscow, there was a lot of explosions and drones flying. So they were obviously Ukrainian drones, and that was Ukraine's response. Essentially, Ukraine warned Moscow that if they continue on doing these terrorist attacks, which we have no doubt they will, Ukraine will also respond, and Ukraine now has the capacity to do that. And we've seen since late summer of this year, Ukraine has really started responding. Every time Russia launches their drone attacks, whether it be in Kiev, Kharkiv, or other cities in Ukraine, Ukraine can respond, and they have the capacity to do so. So you can see that airports in Moscow had to close. Also, explosions could be heard in Moscow Oblast, Tula, and Smolensk. And it just, again, as I said, this is a signal to Russian people that they need to think about the consequences. And the fact that they still call this war a special military operation is just ridiculous, because they have over 300,000 body bags coming back home that came back home, or just somewhere in Ukraine. And they still try to pretend like this is not a full-scale war and that they're not part of this war. And I think that these daily Ukrainian drone attacks, which will happen because Russia will always continue terrorizing the Ukrainian population, will remind the Russians that they're not too far away from their front line and that the Ukrainians do have power and they can also respond when necessary. And again, as it's mentioned here, the war should be fought among the military, confined to the areas of hostilities. So the Ukrainians, of course, are trying to just target military targets in Russia. Of course, some of these drones can get shut down and they might, fall into civilian buildings. That's just, the way of the war. But if people are expecting that the Ukrainians should be responding, they should be attacking Russia, that's not fair. It's Ukraine fighting with a hand already tied to its back. And there's still an expectation that Ukraine can be hitting Russia. It's ridiculous. Another great fire today in Chelyabinsk, and this just happened about an hour ago. Chelyabinsk is pretty far away from the front line. This is close to the Ural Mountains, and a huge video, a video came out with a huge explosion, I should say, of the tractor plant allegedly in Chelyabinsk. And some sources are saying that this tractor plant also produces tank engines, and that's not surprising because tractors usually utilize diesel engines, and so do the Russian tanks. The T-72 uses different variants of diesel engines, so I'm not surprised that in this factory they were producing also different types of engines for the tanks that Russia is currently utilizing. So no details are known as to what happened. Could be, again, Ivan smoking. The health and safety regulations in the workplace in Russia are just not strong enough, in my opinion. All jokes aside, this is excellent news if indeed they were producing diesel engines. And I just want to showcase to you guys where Chelyabinsk is. Not that that someone would be interested in going there, but it's pretty far away. You can see that this is Ukraine here. So it's hundreds of kilometers away. Chelyabinsk is right around here. So The fire actually is in the industrial area, so in the east side of Chelyabinsk. So this is where the fire happened, the explosion at the tractor factory. So very significant, if true. And honestly, I think that this could very well be the work of a Ukrainian sabotage group, just based on how large of an explosion this was. But never discount, the health and safety, or the lack of health and safety regulations within Russian workplaces. That is, we might joke about it, but that is true. The Russians simply don't care about health and safety. And I've seen so many videos of them stockpiling and throwing, shells when they were unloading them from trucks, the Russians, on the front line. So that just showcases how poorly disciplined and how poor the Russian logistics are. They don't even have pallets. They just unload these boxes, that haven't been even checked for decades, haven't been properly stored. So that's the Russian way. They just don't care. And this could very well be just one of those, a bad worker that didn't, follow the instructions, and boom, a big explosion happened. Now, I didn't talk about the map in Ukraine, so the map developments. In Avdiivka, so far the situation remains the same. Since my last update, the Russians only managed to gain a small little foothold in the center of the city. So this is the only change I could find. You can see that they acquired a little bit more control over this road close to Kashtanove. So this is the road that leads into central Avdiivka. But that's about it. So it's just controlling more fields. But I'll keep you guys updated. Again, the Ukrainians cannot allow the Russians to start entering urban settlements around Avdiivka or within Avdiivka, which so far they've been able to do. I've told you guys numerous times, the Russians will do everything possible to take Avdiivka. But I've read an article that, the Ukrainians are also doing their own counterattacks and other small offensives, and one of them was in Horlivka. So the Ukrainians are trying to disrupt the Russian logistics in the north, around Horlivka, because the Russians are using this city of Horlivka to resupply its forces in Krasnohorivka. And the south, it's from Donetsk. They have a lot of roads leading to Vodyane, whereas Krasnohorivka, well, most of the supplies and troops are coming from Horlivka. So the Ukrainians are attacking, they have fire control over a lot of roads that the Russians are utilizing to transport their troops, and everything in Horlivka is extremely important for the Russians. So the Ukrainians are also capable of stabilizing the situation because they find opportunities not just in Avdiivka but elsewhere in terms of attacking the Russians. Apart from that, there's not many updates today. Again, the Ukrainian operations continue in Kherson. So I really think that within the next few weeks, we can start being more open about what is going on. But you guys already know that between Hola Pristan all the way up to Novakakhovka and Tavrisk, the Ukrainians are, building a lot of bridgeheads. They're trying to stabilize them as well. So not just having control of them for a few weeks, but being capable of holding them long term, and also starting to liberate settlements along the left bank of Kherson, which is extremely important to be able to start transporting armored vehicles and more troops from the right bank to the left bank. So the Ukrainians are working towards that, and they're flying hundreds of drones pretty much daily to destroy Russian targets, to scout them, and being able to really pinpoint Russian positions throughout the left bank. So the Ukrainians are doing great work here. Additionally, now I want to talk about one interesting development that the UK Intelligence Ministry, Defense Ministry reported on today, which is that Russia has moved most of its strategic air defenses that are in Kaliningrad to Ukraine. So what does this tell us? This tells us that clearly the Russians are being starved of air defense in Ukraine. And every single day, again, the Ukrainians are destroying anywhere between 10 to 40 air defense systems. So the Russians are losing them severely. And so this is a sign that there is starvation in air defense in the front line, in whether it be in Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, or even Crimea, Kherson. The Russians are now even sacrificing, their oblasts that are landlocked by NATO countries and transporting these air defenses to Ukraine. So this also indicates to you guys how suddenly NATO is not a threat for Russia, right? When it's convenient, NATO is a threat, but when it's not so convenient for them, they need to start transferring these air defense systems into Ukraine. So I find it kind of funny as well. So the Ukrainians are doing great work in terms of destroying Russian air defenses. And the last thing I want to report on is the blockade that is still ongoing between Poland and also I think in Slovakia. So there are 2 blockades ongoing between Polish truckers and Ukrainian truckers. Again, the Polish truckers are demanding the European Union to restore transport quotas on Ukraine. And I just find it so unfair. Let the Ukrainian people breathe a little bit. Their economy is already in shambles. The Ukrainian people are barely, getting by. They're already giving their last dollars to fund the Ukraine military. And then we have blockades between Ukraine and Poland because some Polish farmers or businessmen are not happy that Ukraine, is trying to sell its goods in the European market. I find it extremely unfair. And I think that, of course, things need to be solved through diplomacy, but not through blockades and really making life way harder for the Ukrainian people that are already barely getting by, So I find it to be very unfair on the Ukrainian people that you see, some other citizens, whether it be in Ukraine or in Poland or Slovakia, trying to take advantage of this war. So that's unfortunate, and I really hope that this can get resolved as quickly as possible. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. Let me know what you think about any of these events that occurred today. Again, let me know in the comment section what you think about any of the things that I covered today. And again, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Like my video if you enjoy my content, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you, and Slava Ukraini.